The developers of Runner, Truant Pixel, began their game development journey with an Atami-style visual novel called A Cache Path of the Five in 2019. In 2020, they took a swerve and followed this up with 2MD VR Football, a gridiron game that received a sequel just last month. Runner marks another abrupt change in direction from the Freestrong team, being what they describe as an arcade-inspired VR driving action game. I haven't played their earlier titles, but they are almost universally well regarded, albeit in what are perhaps niche markets. Regardless of the quality of A Cache or 2MD, it's hard to deny that it's a bit of a leap from visual novel to American football and then to arcade driving action. So let's get stuck in and see if Truant Pixel can pull it off. You start Runner in the alleyway of a neon-daubed future cityscape with a tarp-covered motorbike in front of you and a computer terminal to your right. On the terminal, your contact/handler Vice tells you that you need to escape the city, and the only way of doing so is by taking on the attack drones of the sinister Caldera Corporation head-on through the city's main motorway network. It's worth noting here that there's a prologue of sorts called Preamble available for Runner. This is a free interactive story and is available for download on iOS, Android and PC, and although it's not necessary to have experienced it before playing Runner, it does set up the world and characters rather well. There's some rather heavy-handed noirish writing, but nevertheless I would definitely recommend giving it a look. However much or little lore you choose to consume beforehand, the game proper starts when you grab a couple of guns, hop on your motorbike and tear off into the perpetual night. You travel along the 4-lane road automatically, with the game taking care of corners for you, but you do need to use either thumbstick to move left or right across the tarmac, and to accelerate and slow down. In an early prelude to the deceptive complexity on offer, your weapons are docked into the console of the bike when not in use and serve as steering controls. In the opening levels, dual wield isn't possible, so when one hand is taking care of the shooting, the other is controlling the bike, and vice versa. Every time you expend a charge of ammo, you have to switch hands. It takes some getting used to, but it's very satisfying when it clicks. Layered onto this is a slew of other combat options. There's a front-mounted cannon on your bike for which power-ups are available in the time-honoured collect an icon fashion. Upgrades are available for your sidearms and can be equipped individually. There's a laser sword for deflecting incoming enemy fire, missiles with lock-on capabilities, magnetic grenades, and a chargeable special attack called Flux. And this is all just the level 1 basics. Upgrades to all of these and your bike itself are provided between each of the game's 7 levels and help provide a sense of progression. The levels are distinguished by small changes to the palette, roadside architecture, evolution of the in-game enemies, and at the end of each, increasingly spectacular boss battles. With drones high above you and enemies constantly dropping behind and streaming ahead, Runner does an excellent job of wrapping its world around you in the VR space. With this in mind, Truant Pixel have wisely included some very effective comfort controls for Bike Lean and VR Vignette, each with an assignable value from 1 to 10, so you can find your own sweet spot. It doesn't take an anime or sci-fi aficionado to pick up the various inspirations from Runner's visual design and tone. In the depiction of the city and all the various motorbikes you ride in the game, the influence of Katsuhiro Otomo's masterpiece Akira are front and centre. A broader general aesthetic of 90s anime is used for the cutscenes and story sections, with the character art in particular being a beautiful recreation of Japanese animation from that era, while the fully voiced dialogue echoes the gloomy noir of Blade Runner. As you might expect, the art style itself leans towards the popular cel-shaded low polygon end of things and carries it off with no little panache. There's a dash of Atari's Stun Runner in some of the vehicle designs, and I was often put in mind of PlayStation cult classic horizontal shooter Einhander, particularly in the audio design, where police sirens constantly blare and a voiceover aloud halo occasionally breaks through the explosions and gunfire to become almost lyrical alongside a soundtrack that touches on the genres of electro, synthwave and industrial dance at various points during the action. As much as Runner is a very tight and linear experience, procedural generation has been used to add variety along the way, but it's not entirely successful. The random systems are often applied to a type of obstruction that crosses the whole road at various places. The exact style of these changes for different stages, but each is basically a barrier in the road with a switch above it that must be shot to allow safe passage. Problems occur when the procedural generation places the switch section inside a bridge, wall or tunnel artifact, making the target impossible to hit and the obstacle impossible to pass without damage. It's not a common occurrence, it happened only a handful of times in my many runners at the game, but it's doubtless an area that could use a little polish. Another niggle that may be more down to personal taste was the death sequence. Whenever your run is unceremoniously ended, and that will happen a lot, the same sequence plays. Everything stops and a whiteout anime style explosion envelops the screen. It's definitely in keeping with the rest of the game, but I would have preferred something a little more dynamic, or at least relative to the cause of death. If I were to tell you that Runner could be finished in 90 minutes, you might raise a justifiable eyebrow. But while it's true that this is possible, the amount of practice and playtime required to do so makes a mockery of any lack of content fears. Runner is designed to be played multiple times, and its difficulty level is such that after my first 90 minutes, I'd only just encountered the opening level's boss. There are also unlockables and achievements to discover, with nuances to the story that are unlikely to be seen in a single play. All of these factors combine to easily over 10 hours of content for players who want to see it all, and that's a very decent quantity of bang for your $15. What Runner does so brilliantly is to take all the elements of a classic arcade game and bring them to VR in a way that many others have failed to achieve. Whether it's the old-fashioned power-up icons, screen-clearing special weapons, giant enemies with glowing weak spots, or the riotous sound design, it's all brought bumping and wailing up to date in a game that oozes style and energy and is delivered with an extremely challenging but hugely addictive gameplay loop. The feeling you get from taking on the constant barrage of enemies with a huge and varied arsenal at hand while weaving through traffic and dodging incoming fire is up there with the most visceral experiences I've had in VR. Runner is a cacophony of high-octane entertainment from the very first moment to the very last. If the straightforward thrills of an arcade experience aren't your thing, then I doubt this will be the game to win you over, but for everyone else, this is a good old-fashioned, all-out, gun-toting anime action movie of a game that shouldn't be missed. No one will be calling Runner the future of VR anytime soon, but it's definitely the future of my quest for a good while yet. 8. Riotous.